Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight on my very first episode of Let's Talk About It Fab. So, we're gonna just jump right into it. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have just been waiting to really find out what this podcast is all about. Like, Fab, what are you up to now? But this one is this project is a little near and dear to my heart. It is definitely allowing me to be very vulnerable, more vulnerable than I would like to be, um, but is highly necessary. Um, First, I'd like to start off by saying that I am not a relationship expert. I am not a marital or divorce expert, um, or guru or anything like that. I am simply an individual who I feel has been tasked with sharing my journey, my marital, dating, divorce, post divorce journey with you, as I believe it will help someone on their journey as well. Um, but the divorce rate being as high as it is, um, and for me, coming out of a Christian background or strong Christian community, you would think that those numbers wouldn't be as high as they are within the church, right? But they are, and I always question, like, why? Like, if we have the truth and Jesus is so amazing, how come the divorce rate or just marital and relational issues are such a big deal within the community? And I came to the realization of two things. One being that a lot of it has to do with our childhood. And I know that's a very touchy, sensitive topic for a lot of us, but I really do believe that the relationships we have with our parents, in our childhood and how we were raised shapes us, or at least shapes the relationships we have with individuals as an adult. And not just, I'm talking about platonic relationships as well, not just, sexual or, relational type of relationships, but like any type of relationship. It plays a very big role in how we do life as adults. And the second thing is, I really believe that God had a well-designed blueprint for family, for marriage, and that's something we'll talk about a little later. But so, with that being said, I kind of wanted to start off my journey by talking about my childhood, because you will see down the line how it shaped how I did relationships as an adult. So I'm just realizing this. I didn't realize it before, but I always did wonder why there were brackets of my childhood that I don't remember. Um, while some people would talk like, hey, when I was 9, I remember this. When I was 10, I used to do that. I don't have much recollection of bits and pieces of my childhood. And I guess because that was just my trauma response and how I dealt with some things. And so I had a pretty good childhood. Like, I remember my mom, I remember my dad, I remember my younger brother. I just have one brother. I remember us having a happy childhood. My father was around. He was constantly chasing my mother, like constantly chasing her, kissing her, hugging her, giving her affection, smacking her butt, and giving her affection. I remember him coming from work and like leaving stacks of money on a dresser, like, I guess he went to the bank, cash his check, whatever the case may be, but he was giving my mother money for her to take care of things in the household. I remember that. I remember myself being happy and content, and I remember the same thing. My brother, he was content, although him and I, we had our little friction, but typical, family thing. But I was 12. I was 12 years old. And I remember it being it was a cold January. I mean, it's usually cold in January, right? And I remember it was cold. It was January. I remember it was Martin Luther King's birthday. And I think that was like on a Monday or something. And it was a school night and I couldn't go to sleep. For the life of me, I just couldn't fall asleep. I just remember staying up, looking out the window or something like that. But I just I couldn't fall asleep. That I remember. Um, and then eventually I did fall asleep, got up, went to school, started my day, so on and so forth. And after school, the schedule was my father would pick us up. We would head over to McDonald's. We would hang around for a little bit, or maybe he'd take us to the park. And then we would go to the babysitter. And then my dad would make his way, to work because he worked at night. And then my mom would come around like 8 o'clock and pick us up from the babysitter, which like lived on the fourth floor. I think we lived on the fifth floor. And then that would just be, the cycle. I remember that. I remember. But this Tuesday was just not normal. It was just not regular. And for someone like me, like I remember being 12, like I was very intuitive. I was very aware of things, and anything that shifted slightly or changed slightly, I was just like, all right, this is not normal. This doesn't happen. But anyway, so that Tuesday, my father didn't come pick us up. I don't really quite remember who picked us up, but he didn't pick us up. And I remember um, heading home, and then we went to the babysitter's house. And I don't know if it was before or after. I remember going to our door and finding a sticky note on the door. Matter of fact, if my memory serves me right, I don't even remember being picked up by anyone at all. I think the school was not too far from our home. I think I grabbed my brother, and then I went to our door, and I noticed a sticker on there with a name on it and a phone number. And so I walked myself to the babysitter. I believe. Anyway, we got there. I gave it to the babysitter, and I believe she called my mom. She gave it to my mom, and I remember playing around, being normal, and then a couple of minutes later, a family member, a family friend, a friend of the family's actually, she came and got us from the babysitter. Which again, to me, I was just like, what is going on? Like, this is not normal. And then I recall us heading to my grandmother's house, my mother's house. And at that time, I remember going to grandma's house was like something that happened definitely in the weekends, not in the middle of the week, not on a Tuesday. And it wasn't frequent. It was like, maybe like once every 2 months or something like that, or once a month, but it wasn't in the middle of the week. And I remember I found that very strange. And I asked, I said, what are we going to grandma's house for? We never go to grandma's house during the week. And I remember her telling me something to the effect of, oh, we have to go to grandma's house. I think your mom's going to pick you up from there. And I was just like, okay. My brother now, who's 7 years old, is oblivious to anything that's going on. He's just like playing with his toys or whatever. Anyway, we get out the car, we walk into the building, and I press the fifth floor, going to grandma's house as normal. And I remember getting on the floor, arriving on the fifth floor, and just being embraced by just a very just having a very leery feeling, like something wasn't right, and it also wasn't good. At that time, there were some people already at my grandmother's house, and I just remember hearing her like scream and cry at the same time, and I just was like, oh my, like, what am I walking into? But nothing could prepare me for what was up next? So I remember, I walked in and I was greeted by some friends of the family that lived in the neighborhood by my grandmother's house. I remember my Aunt Nancy being there, and I remember seeing my Uncle Ronald, and I was just like, why are these people here? Like, these are faces that I usually see at church on Sundays, and faces that I see when I come visit grandma. This person lives downstairs, this person lives upstairs, and I'm just like, what are they all doing here at the same time? Like, what occasion would bring all these people together? And I remember walking into the living room and my grandmother taking one look at me and screaming at the top of her lungs, like, somebody please tell them. I can't tell them. And I just like surveyed the room, like, tell me what? And then obviously no one uttered a word, but her next words were, your dad is dead. And I don't know if it was shock. I don't know what it was exactly, but I just froze and I just went numb. My brother, on the other hand, he just started bawling. He started crying his eyes out. He started bawling and crying. But for me, it was just kind of like a delayed reaction. And I don't know if it's because I was 12 and I was just so in my head. Or it was shock. I just couldn't process what she was saying. My first words were, how? And she said, someone shot him. And then I was just like, well, why would someone shoot him? Because for me, that's daddy. Daddy is a loving person. Daddy would never hurt anyone. In my mind, in my 12-year-old mind, people who get shot with a gun are bad people. People who have done wrong in this world get shot by guns. That's what I'm thinking in my head. And I'm like, well, my dad was not a bad person. Why would someone shoot him? Right? And I was just like, wow, like, why would someone do that? But my next thought was what I say created the biggest trauma in my life that I did not realize that I carried with me for years. So a week before that incident, my school was having a class trip to the circus, Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, if anyone out there really remembers. And I was so excited. I remember being so excited to go on this trip. And my mom worked, so I know she couldn't take me. My dad said he would take me. He promised me that he would take me to the circus. And I remember being so excited that I would go to the circus and I'd see all these animals and I'd have some quality time with my dad because my dad worked so much. So I was so excited that I'd have some quality time with him, just me and him. We would go to the circus and it'd be so fun. And so after I learned that he died, after I found out how he died, and I questioned, like, oh my God, like, my dad wasn't a bad dude. Why would anyone want to kill him? My next thought, which I guess when I think about it now was kind of selfish, but I was 12. That's what came to mind. I was traumatized at the fact that my father would now never be able to take me to the circus on that trip. And it was after I had that thought that I cried. And it hurt me to the core. Just, I think that's where the abandonment issues came from. The feelings of rejection came from. There was just always a void. There was just always an agonizing, deep, deep void that no one walking this planet could ever seem to fill. But I didn't realize it because my trauma response was kind of like, I got to be strong for my mom. I got to be strong for my little brother. I don't know. I just felt like an overwhelming feeling of I had to be an adult now. That there's a family member missing from this family. And to make it complete, to make life a little easier, I felt like I had to step in and help and be an adult and be in control. And I don't recall anyone ever making me feel that way. It's just instantly came to mind that I have to be strong. And so therefore I've carried this weight on my shoulders of you got to be strong. You can't show weakness. You can't show emotion. You have to deal. You have to put on a smile and you have to show up every day. At 12. And again, I'm being completely honest with you. After that, I remember funeral arrangements. I remember my dad being gone. I remember processing life as this young adult who always had to be strong. I don't know where it came from, but that's just how I felt. After that point, we lived. My mom was so afraid. She did not want to go back to that apartment by herself. So we kind of moved in with my grandmother. We slept on the living room floor for like years until my grandparents eventually bought a home, and then we inherited the apartment, so on and so forth. The rest of this you can read in my book, book Busy and Broke, available December 7th. But I say all of this to say because I believe, again, a good percentage of how we do life and how we show up in relationships as adults have a lot to do with our childhood, how we were raised, how we were shown love, how we perceive love, how we received love, how we understood love as children. And for me, I really didn't know that I carried a lot of these issues into my relationships as an adult, primarily into my marriage. And so, yeah. So for years, I had abandonment issues, which also led into people pleasing because if I felt like, I had to be so strong, I had to be so, not showing emotion, I felt like I also had to people please. I had to make sure everyone else was good. Like my brother was good. My mother was good. I remember being like maybe like 16, 17, maybe even 18, but I remember working. And I remember telling my mom, like, look, Mom, I'm working now. You don't have to worry about me and me having things. I'm going to buy everything I need. You just make sure that you save your money and you take care of my little brother and you can focus on him. I will take care of myself. I will work and I will have money and I will take care of myself. And I'm like 16, 17 years old. But I felt like I had to do that. So what do you think I did in my relationships? I prided myself on being independent and never having to ask a man for money. I prided myself on that. I prided myself on providing for myself and never accepting anything from any man. Like I prided myself on that. And I never knew where that came from. Like it was hard for me to take gifts from men. It was always hard for me to receive monetary gifts or like just gifts in general. I would always offer to pay for my own things. Like you wonder where all of these things come from. Like I'm telling you, dig into your childhood. A lot of how you show up in dating and relationships now in your marriage, it has a lot to do with your childhood. And I didn't realize this until, recent, that I was operating from a place of how I viewed my self-worth. And I don't know if that makes sense. There were a lot of relationships that I was in that I should have never been in, but I was in them and I stayed in them for the amount of time that I stayed in them because I was dating at my level of self-worth, which was nothing at this point. And I know that I'm a bit of an empath. I wear my heart on my sleeve. And I know that stems from, like, again, that void that I've been trying to fill, like, in need of love and appreciation and acceptance. I just became this empath. And what do empaths attract? Narcissists. Man, I could write a whole nother book on that, but I'm gonna stick to this one for now. So this first episode being entitled Dating 101, I really had to do the inner work, guys. I really, really, really had to pull back and sit with myself and really figure out who I am and what it is exactly I'm looking for in this life. After my divorce, I really, really, really had to sit down with myself and, like, look, who are you? I sat down, I looked myself in the mirror. I remember looking, I'm like, who are you? And what is it that you want? What is it that you're looking for? Because we got to write this down. We got to make it plain, and we got to do the inner work so we are no longer operating on a frequency that's attracting the wrong type of people. So I really had to stop. I had to take accountability for myself and my actions, um, and really find myself value. And once I did that, the pool of men that I have access to right now has completely changed. It has completely changed. That and having boundaries, I would say, has been a really big tool in how I date right now, so to say. So I'm not gonna take too much of your time. Like I said, I want to try to keep these episodes really, really short, like 30 minutes or less. Maybe we'll go up to an hour if I have like a friend on that we're discussing and talking. But like I said, guys, I want to start here. I want to begin here. And the reason why I say that is because more and more that I speak to people, men and women, I'm learning that, again, a lot of our fears, a lot of how we show up as adults in any type of relationship, it has a lot to do with our childhood. So I urge you and I encourage you to sit down, really sit down and look at yourself and really, really think back to your childhood and your relationship with your mom, your relationship with your dad, your relationship with your siblings, relationship with people around you, and really, really, really unpack how you viewed love as a child and how you view love. What does love look like to you? What did it look like to you? What does it look like to you now? And let's do that inner work. So maybe that's some homework for you, right? Sit down, think about your childhood. Think about the first time someone made you feel love. What did that look like? Write it down. Let's unpack it. Let's talk about it. Let's deal with it. Because I believe that that is the framework that we have to start from in order to have better relationships with people in the future. Or else we're going to be out here just bleeding on everyone And instead of taking accountability for ourselves and how we see relationships and how we do relationships, we'll just walk around blaming other people. Yeah. So this has been an amazing first segment. I am so excited. Guys, please subscribe to my channel. Please hit the like button. Pre-order my book, Booked, Busy, and Broke. That's dropping December 1st. That's available for pre-order right now on www.letstalkaboutitfab.com. Let's really, really, really have these conversations. Let's really, really, really talk. Let's really talk. Let's really unpack these things. Because again, like I feel like a lot of these conversations are conversations we don't have enough. And even coming from a really strong church community, even, I don't even think there was never even a platform to even have those conversations within the church. So really trying to create a safe place here for us to have that dialogue and to start that dialogue. So leave me a comment, text me, shoot me a DM, and let me know what you think about this first episode. And let's really unpack these things. Thank you so much, guys. I love you. Take care. Bye.